Blood on the tile used to mean somebody was still alive to bleed. Up here, on the 9th floor, blood barely ever showed at all, and that was the part that scared people more, though they never said so. You could handle a wound you could see. What broke people was watching a man disappear one quiet vital sign at a time, with nothing to press a bandage against. Elena Kade had learned that division long before she wore scrubs. The 9th floor of Ashford-Whitcombe Memorial did not smell like a hospital. 2 floors down, the ER was bleach, adrenaline, and fear sweat. Up here, pale engineered oak swallowed footsteps, warm recessed lights softened every face, and filtered cedar covered what dying still smelled like underneath: copper, ketones, and something faintly sweet. At 44, Elena had spent 11 years in Navy scrubs and longer than that learning not to show what a room did to her. A puckered scar ran from her left wrist toward her elbow. She adjusted the sleeve over it and continued down the hall, eyes moving once across every doorway without her head appearing to turn. She stopped outside room 914. No name on the plaque. Just the number. Everyone on the floor knew who was behind that door, and that his only son had spent 3 nights coming and going without once sitting beside the bed. Walton Ashford. Founder of Ashford Property Group, majority owner of 11 downtown towers and a shipping terminal, current net worth somewhere north of $2 billion, and, as of 6 weeks ago, a man whose pancreas had turned against him with the specific, patient cruelty that cancer reserved for people who'd spent their whole lives believing nothing could touch them. Elena pushed open the heavy door. The suite was the size of a decent apartment, 2 cream leather sofas nobody sat on, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city's glittering late-night skyline, and an espresso machine that had never once been used correctly. In the center, elevated on a bed that cost more than Elena's car, lay Walton Ashford, skin gone the color of old parchment, cheekbones pushing hard against it, tubes threading from both arms into equipment that kept quiet count. "You're late." His voice was a scrape, dry leaves over pavement. Elena checked her watch. "Shift change was 4 minutes ago, Mr. Ashford." "I was reading your chart." "4 minutes is real money when you're paying $11,000 a night for this room, Ms. Kade." He didn't open his eyes. His hands, bruised a deep plum from 6 weeks of 4 sticks, twitched against the 1,200 thread count sheet. "But I don't suppose people in your bracket think much about what things cost." Elena didn't answer that. She crossed to the 4-pole and confirmed the morphine was running at the rate authorized in his comfort care orders. Walton Ashford's insults landed on her the way weather lands on stone. "Pain level," she said. Not a question, really, a data request, delivered without the sing-song condescension so many nurses defaulted to with the elderly and dying, as if terror made people deaf. "Manageable." He spat the word like it cost him something to give it up freely. "My mouth's like sandpaper." "Get me ice." She went to the kitchenette, scooped crushed ice into a plastic cup, brought it back with a small spoon balanced on the rim. She raised the head of the bed a careful few degrees, enough that he wouldn't aspirate, not so much that his lower back would ache, and offered the spoon. He knocked it out of her hand. It clattered against the nightstand, ice scattering. "I can feed myself. I built an empire, I didn't lose the ability to hold a goddamn spoon." "Never said you did." Elena set the cup down within his reach and crouched to pick the fallen spoon off the floor, unbothered, her face doing nothing at all. Ashford's eyes, yellowed now, the whites gone the color of weak tea, but still sharp, still calculating in a way the cancer hadn't managed to dull, tracked her as she straightened. "You're an odd one, Kade." His hand shook as he reached for the cup and missed it by half an inch. Elena nudged it a fraction closer without comment, letting his fingers find it on their own. "Help him too much and you stole the last dignity a dying man had left, which was doing the small things himself for as long as his body allowed it. The others in here, they flutter around me. Whisper. Look at me like I'm already in the ground. You look at me like I'm furniture. I look at you like a patient. She checked the catheter bag hanging at the foot of the bed, dark, concentrated, low output. Kidneys shutting down. Not tonight, probably. Soon. My job is to keep you comfortable. Not to flatter you, and not to grieve you in advance. He let out a papery laugh that collapsed into a wet, rattling cough. Elena was at his shoulder before the second cough hit, supporting him forward, a tissue already in her free hand, holding the position until the spasm passed and his breathing evened back out. When she eased him back against the pillows, he was damp with sweat, chest heaving in small, shallow drags. I like you, he whispered, eyes sliding shut. You don't care about the money. I care about your blood pressure. She glanced at the monitor. 92/58, trending down since the 7 p.m. reading. Try and rest, Mr. Ashford. She withdrew to the charting alcove near the door. The city glittered below, indifferent. She had taken this job not to save people, but to make the last room they occupied slightly less frightening. It was not heroism. It was closer to penance, though she had never said that word aloud. The suite door slammed open, striking the rubber wall stop hard enough to rattle the photographs on the console table. Most showed a younger Walton standing before buildings. Half hidden behind one silver frame was a smaller picture of Walton on a rooftop beside a boy of 10 or 11. Walton was looking at the skyline. The boy was looking at him. She didn't startle. Her pulse didn't so much as flicker. But her eyes cut instantly from the window to the doorway, cataloging before her conscious mind had finished forming the thought, threat assessment, size, gait, hands. Beckett Ashford filled the doorway the way expensive cologne fills a small room, aggressively. 27, 6'3", built like the Fight Academy named on his hoodie, he carried a duffel beneath one arm and an Ouroboros tattoo around the other. Elena noticed the right leg hitch, the clenched jaw, and the way his eyes went first to the monitor instead of his father's face. Elena read fear beneath the muscle and black belt. She had seen frightened men posture 100 times. Most of them wanted an exit more than a fight. Why's it dark in here? Beckett didn't wait for an answer before slapping the wall panel, flooding the room in glaring overhead light. On the bed, Walton groaned, throwing a thin forearm across his eyes. Turn it off, Beckett. You gotta wake up sometime, Dad. It's like a funeral parlor in here. He had not glanced at Elena, she registered the way the four-pole did, a fixture rather than a person. Why is he this sedated? Where's the doctor? Your father was resting, Mr. Ashford. Elena's voice came level and quiet from the alcove. Beckett froze mid-stride, pivoting like he'd only just now clocked another human being in the room. His gaze dragged over her, navy scrubs, unremarkable build, the faint gray threading through dark hair she kept in a low bun, a scar disappearing under her sleeve he didn't bother to notice. His upper lip curled. Who the hell are you? Where's the blonde one, Priya? Priya's on break. I'm Elena. I'm covering the floor tonight. Elena. He said her name like a challenge. He crossed inside the range most people called personal. My father needs someone awake in here. Get the doctor. And bring me a coffee. Black. Elena did not move from the chair. She met his eyes without challenging him and kept both hands visible. Panic made room smaller. Her job was to keep this one from shrinking around them. Coffee machines at the nurse's station down the hall, she said. Help yourself. I need to check your father's vitals. His face went red in blotches up the neck. He was a man entirely unused to the word no, and especially unused to hearing it from somebody he'd already filed under hired help. He planted his hands on his hips, widened his stance, leaned in. You people keep pumping him full of morphine and calling it comfort. His voice cracked at the edge, then hardened to hide it. Do you have any idea who my father is? I can have a specialist here before you finish your little chart. I can have you off this floor by morning. From the bed, Walton's voice came out thin but sharp. Leave her be, Beckett. She's doing her job. Something you've never bothered to learn how to do. The words stopped Beckett. His face tightened as he looked at his father, then away. He came here for something Walton has never learned how to give him, Elena thought. It was only a guess. She had no time to test it. Beckett turned back toward her. Don't look at me like that, he snapped, jabbing a thick finger toward her. Like what? Like you feel sorry for me. Like you already decided I'm some spoiled idiot who can't understand his own father's chart. He took another half step in. You don't know anything about me. Something cold and old settled over Elena. The noise of the room thinned into geometry, 18 inches, weight canted forward, right shoulder tightening before the rest of him understood what it had decided. Mr. Ashford, Elena said, and her voice dropped a register, lost its conversational edge, went flat and level the way a command does. Step back. You're agitating the patient and you're in my workspace. Make me. He shoved her, both palms flat to her chest. Elena gave ground one step instead of fighting his weight, keeping herself between him and the bed. Her hip struck the charting desk. Pain flashed beneath the old scar in her arm. His eyes flickered, confusion, the first crack in the performance. That's your one, Elena said quietly. Don't touch me again. Walton coughed behind them, wet and sudden. Elena turned toward the bed and reached for the tubing. What are you giving him? Beckett caught her left wrist and yanked it away from the foreline. When she tried to free herself, his forearm drove across her shoulder and shoved again, harder this time, with the practiced balance of someone accustomed to controlling bodies on a mat. Elena had been right about the fear and wrong about what he would do with it. Elena Kade had never once in her life fought for points. She did not trade strength with him. She stepped toward the trapped wrist, rotated until his grip weakened, then caught his elbow and turned her hips. Beckett tried to plant his right leg. The damaged knee failed him. Beckett struck the cream sofa shoulder first. Elena followed only far enough to pin his wrist against the cushion and keep his free hand in sight. The exchange took less than 2 seconds, sneaker rubber, a grunt, and the monitor continuing its count. Beckett lay pinned, breathing hard, surprise replacing the anger in his face. This isn't a cage, Elena said, her own breath less even than she wanted. And your father isn't an audience. How did you? I'm his nurse. She kept his wrist still. I change his catheter. I turn him so he doesn't get bedsores. That's the answer. She released his arm, stood in one fluid motion, and stepped back out of range before he'd even finished registering the joint was free. Elena reached behind her and pressed the staff assist button. You're going to stay there until security arrives. Then you'll give them your name, and you'll leave this floor. If you want to come back, it will be after the charge nurse clears it, and only if you can sit with your father instead of picking fights beside him. Do we understand each other? Beckett stared at the floor, breathing hard. Then he gave a stiff nod. Footsteps approached fast in the hall. Beckett rose without meeting her eyes and gathered his duffel. All the swagger had gone out of his walk. At the threshold, his father's voice caught him. Beckett. He stopped, shoulders sagging. Yeah, Dad. When you come back. Walton's eyes stayed closed, his voice thin as paper. Don't yell at the staff. They work harder than you ever have in your life. Beckett's throat worked. He nodded once, though his father couldn't see it, and the door clicked shut behind him. 2 security officers met him outside. Elena gave the charge nurse a factual account, allowed her bruising hip to be photographed, and completed the incident report before returning to Walton's chart. Beckett would not be allowed back without approval. Elena watched the door a moment, then returned to the charting desk and picked up where she'd left off. "Impressive," Walton murmured. "Where'd you learn that?" "Physical therapy," Elena lied, without missing a beat, eyes on the screen. A faint, cracked smile pulled at his lips. "You're a frightening woman, Kade." "I'm a nurse, Mr. Ashford." She clicked the mouse. "Your pressure's stabilizing. Try to sleep." She had learned to lie about where she learned things because the truth took longer than most people wanted to listen. For one instant she saw failing generator lights, blood turned black beneath them, and a 19-year-old private looking impossibly small on a litter. Then room 914 returned, cedar, warm light, Walton's thinning breath. Elena flexed her aching left hand once and resumed the chart. "Hospitals do not sleep, but somewhere around 3 in the morning they do hold their breath." The manic churn of day shift was a distant memory by then, visiting hours over, administration gone, the hallways empty and silent as a held note. It was the hour when blood pressure dropped and the body quietly decided whether it had fuel for one more sunrise. Elena knew 3 in the morning the way some people knew a hometown. Down the hall, she heard the soft squeak of rubber-soled shoes and looked up to see Priya Chen, the day shift nurse, 26, still in scrubs though her shift had technically ended 2 hours ago, leaning against the doorframe of the break room with 2 cups of vending machine coffee. "You're still here," Elena said. Double came up. Marcus called out. Priya handed her a cup, dropped into the chair across from the charting station with the particular boneless exhaustion of someone 6 hours past done. "Heard there was a situation in 914. "Handled." "That's what everyone says about you, you know." "Handled. Like you're a fire extinguisher." Priya took a sip, made a face at the coffee's quality, drank it anyway. "The kid tried something?" "He was scared. Then he crossed a line." Priya studied her for a second. She was smart, sharper than she let on, one of the few people on the floor who'd noticed the way Elena's eyes worked a room before her feet ever moved through it. "You going to write it up?" Security took the report. "He can't return unless you or the charge nurse clears him." "That's very procedural for a woman who could have broken his arm." Elena allowed the corner of her mouth to move. Control was enough. Priya's gaze dropped to Elena's hip. "Occupational health?" "After shift." "It's a bruise. You don't get to diagnose yourself." "I just did." Priya held out a folded visitor badge. He waited downstairs and apologized to both officers. The nursing supervisor spoke with the attending. They approved an end-of-life exception because he's the only immediate family, but security stays outside the room. One raised voice and he's gone. Elena looked toward 914. "Walton may not have another hour." "That's why I said yes." Priya let the silence sit a moment. Then, quieter, "You okay? You get this look sometimes. Like you're somewhere else." "I'm fine, Priya." "You always say that." "It's always true." Elena said it gently enough that it didn't sound like a wall, though it was one, and Priya, who had learned, over 8 months of working alongside her, exactly which walls were worth knocking on, let it be. She finished her coffee, said goodnight, and headed for the elevator, her footsteps the last human sound in the hallway for a long while. The heavy door of 914 opened again at 10 to 4. It didn't slam this time, it came open slowly, almost apologetically, on a hinge that made barely a sound. Beckett Ashford stood in the doorway with his hoodie zipped to the chin and the temporary visitor badge clipped where Priya could see it. A security officer remained in the hall. Beckett carried a cardboard tray with 2 steaming cups. Most of the performance was gone, but shame still held his shoulders rigid. He didn't look at the bed first. He looked at Elena. He crossed to the charting desk and held the tray out. "Black," he said. "I got it myself." She took the cup. "Thank you." He set his phone face down, switched off the overhead light he had turned on earlier, and pulled a chair toward the bed. Elena took the sequence for an apology delivered without words. She would discover a few minutes later that she had read him too generously. "I didn't go to the cafeteria," he admitted. "Walked around the block outside 3 times. It's freezing out there." "It can help," Elena said. The coffee was burnt and bitter. He let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "My shoulder's going to hate me tomorrow." "Your shoulder hit the sofa. If the tingling doesn't clear, get it checked." He nodded. For a while neither spoke. The oxygen concentrator hissed beside the widening gaps between Walton's breaths. "He's not waking up again, is he?" It was not a question. "His organs are failing." Elena kept her voice grounded, factual, no false comfort, no softened edges. People deserve the truth delivered without theater. The morphine's holding the pain at bay. But the body's shutting down the systems it doesn't strictly need anymore. Consciousness goes early. Beckett's shoulders hitched. He breathed once, unsteadily. Then the old reflex returned. He stood and reached for his phone. "No. Harlan said there was another trial in Boston. I can have a plane ready. We can move him tonight. He would die in the ambulance or on the tarmac." "You don't know that." "I know his blood pressure. I know his urine output. I know the pattern of his breathing." Elena did not raise her voice. "And I know the comfort care directive your father signed while he could still make the decision himself." Beckett stared at the dark phone screen. His thumb moved toward Harlan's number. "You can spend his last hour arranging a plane," Elena said, "or you can spend it beside him." His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he powered the phone off and placed it beneath his chair. His gaze caught on the small photograph behind the silver frame. He reached for it and stopped before touching it. "I didn't know he kept that," he said. In the photograph, the boy beside Walton held a pair of boxing gloves against his chest. "He built the first property from nothing," Beckett said. "A condemned strip mall, money borrowed from a cousin. He used to take me onto that roof and point, 'Ours, soon to be ours, coming down next spring.'" He looked from the photograph to the bed. "I never understood any of it. I thought if I got good enough at the one thing I could do, he'd eventually respect that." Elena remembered being 9 years old in a kitchen that smelled of her mother's cigarettes, hearing her own father describe her as almost, but never quite, enough. She did not spend that grief in Walton's room. "The buildings aren't in this bed," she said. "You are." Beckett looked at his father. The hands that had signed 9-figure contracts lay curled and bruised on the sheet. "How do you do this?" he asked, turning to her. The question came out stripped of everything performative, just raw. "Sit in a room with someone dying and just watch the clock. Doesn't it mess with your head? Doesn't it make you feel useless?" Elena set down her coffee and looked at her hands. Helmand Province, 15 years earlier. She was 29, a 68W combat medic working beside a forward surgical team in a converted grain warehouse. At 0340 the generator lights flickered, and Private Isaiah Cho, 19, from Fresno, 6 weeks into his first deployment, arrived with an abdominal wound the senior surgeon initially called unsalvageable amid a room full of casualties. Elena stayed on the bleed. With blood black beneath the failing lights, she maintained pressure long enough for a second assessment and bought the surgical team 90 seconds. 90 seconds proved enough. Isaiah lived, went home, had 2 daughters, and sent her a Christmas card every December. Others had died while she did everything right. Their names still found her on certain anniversaries. "It used to mess with me," she said. "I thought my job was to beat death back with my hands. I was furious every time I couldn't." She looked at Walton. "I can't stop the train. I can make sure nobody rides it alone." Beckett studied her for a long moment. "You were military." "A long time ago." "What branch?" "Army. Combat medic. 2 deployments." She offered nothing further, and he understood that this was the whole of what he would get. He nodded slowly. "What I did before, there's no excuse for it. You could have had me arrested. Maybe you should have. The report is filed. What happens next isn't mine to decide." He rubbed his palm over his face. "I am sorry. I know saying it doesn't fix anything." "It doesn't," Elena said. "Do something different with the next hour." Beckett leaned forward and put his face in his hands. Neither of them spoke. From the bed came a sound so small Elena almost mistook it for air moving through the cannula. "Beck." Beckett's head lifted. Walton's eyes did not open. His fingers moved once against the sheet, searching. Beckett crossed the space and took them. "I'm here, Dad." Walton swallowed with visible effort. "You stayed." It was not the apology Beckett had wanted. But Walton had chosen to say it while choice remained. Beckett bowed his head over their joined hands. "Yeah," he whispered. "I stayed." At 4:12 the room's tenor shifted. Not an alarm, nothing so dramatic. Just a change in the rhythm of Walton Ashford's breathing, the shallow, even pulse deepening, then pausing, a long agonizing gap, then a rapid flutter of catch-up breaths. Shane Stokes. The unmistakable acoustic signature of the end, one Elena had heard often enough that she no longer needed the monitors to confirm what her ears already knew. She stood. "What is it?" Beckett's head snapped up, panic flaring back into his face. "It's time," she said, and moved to the bedside with the unhurried, practiced efficiency of someone who understood that rushing bred panic, and panic was contagious. She checked the morphine line, confirmed it was flowing clean, made sure his comfort was maximized for whatever remained of his failing nervous system. Beckett stood frozen by the sofa, looking, for the first time all night, like exactly what he was, a young man who had never once been taught how to do this. "Come here," Elena said, and her voice was an anchor thrown into the middle of his panic. He crossed to the bedside on unsteady legs. "Hold his hand," she told him gently. He reached out. His hand, thick, calloused from years of grip strength training and heavy bag work, dwarfed his father's thin, bruised fingers entirely. "He can't hear me." Beckett's voice cracked. Tears finally slid over his lower lids, tracking through days-old stubble. "He doesn't even know I'm here." "He may still hear you," Elena said. "Talk to him as if he can. If there's anything you need to say, now's the time." Beckett looked down at his father. For once, there was nothing left to prove and no time left to prove it. "I'm here, Dad," he whispered, gripping the frail hand tighter. "I'm right here. You don't have to fight it anymore. It's okay. You can let go." Elena stepped back toward the door and gave them the room. The pauses between Walton's breaths stretched, 10 seconds, then 20. Beckett held his own breath through every one, waiting, praying wordlessly for one more rise of his father's chest. At 4:47, Walton Ashford drew a sharp, rattling breath. His chest lifted. It fell. It did not rise again. The silence that followed was total. The bedside monitor, left on low volume at the family's request, registered a few fading electrical complexes. Elena watched Walton's chest, listened at his mouth, and felt for a carotid pulse. There was none. She silenced the monitor before it could alarm. Beckett did not move. He kept Walton's hand in his, head bowed, shoulders shaking. Elena stayed by the door and did not interrupt him. Beyond the skyline, the first gray of morning had appeared. After a while, 10 minutes, maybe more, Beckett laid his father's hand gently back on the sheet and stepped away, wiping his face with his sleeve, leaving dark streaks across the fabric. What happens now? His voice had gone hollow. I'll make the calls, Elena said, stepping forward. The attending will come pronounce him officially. Then we'll prepare him to go down to the morgue. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. Beckett shook his head slowly. No. I think I'm done. He looked at the bed one final time. Walton's face was still. He turned to Elena but did not offer his hand. Thank you, he said. For staying. Take care of your shoulder, she said. And answer when security calls. He nodded once, pulled his hood up, and walked out. The heavy door clicked shut behind him, sealing the quiet back inside. After the attending pronounced the death and the required calls were made, Elena returned to the suite. With slow, practiced hands, following hospital policy, she completed post-mortem care and smoothed the blanket before the funeral home arrived. She washed her hands, dried them methodically, and sat down to type the final chart entry. Asterisk patient expired 4:47. Family present at bedside. No signs of distress. Asterisk she logged out. Her shift wasn't over, 3 more rooms, 2 more sets of vitals, a med pass at 6, but something in her chest loosened the way it always did after a death handled well, a small private exhale that had no name she'd ever bothered giving it. 6 weeks later, Elena came off a 12-hour shift to find a manila envelope at the nurse's station. Inside was a photograph of Beckett at an old neighborhood boxing gym. He was wrapping a boy's hands while 3 other kids waited on the ring apron. On the back, in blunt block letters, asterisk Saturdays. Kids. Trying. B asterisk Elena looked at it for a long moment. Then she slipped it into the front pocket of her bag beside the Christmas card from Isaiah Cho, 2 daughters in matching pajamas, their father's old scar hidden beneath his shirt. Outside, morning had begun to gray the sky. Elena touched the seam of scar tissue along her own forearm, then walked to her car. Some rescues didn't look like rescues at all, no helicopter, no medal, nothing to write home about. Sometimes they were only a steady hand on someone's shoulder at 4 in the morning, holding a room together until the person inside it did not need holding anymore,